Have you ever walked into a room and felt an unease you couldn't name? The laughter sounded real, the words flowed easily, yet something beneath the surface whispered that not everything was what it seemed. You looked around, but instead of seeing, you were being seen. Your posture, your hesitation, even the silence you tried to hide. Most people believe they are in control of how they are perceived, when in truth they are transparent, giving themselves away in every small detail. The Stoics understood this long before us. They knew that strength is not found in noise but in perception, the kind of perception that cuts through masks and reveals what others desperately try to conceal. Words can deceive, but energy, rhythm, and small cracks in behavior rarely lie. To catch them, though, you must learn to stand still inside, to watch without rushing, to strip away the haze of your own emotion. What if you could see people this way? What if, without speaking a word, you could move through the world with quiet authority? Stay with me and let's step into that kind of vision together. As we step into the first chapter, picture this. You enter a room and instantly feel a weight pressing on your chest. Every glance seems sharp, every silence loaded, but the truth is simpler. Nothing has happened yet. It is your own emotion painting the scene. This is how most of us live, seeing not the world, but our fears reflected back at us. Modern life trains us to react fast. A disagreement feels like an attack. A delay feels like rejection. We walk into conversations wondering, do they like me? Instead of asking, what is truly happening here? That frantic self-focus is a kind of blindness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. That sentence cuts through the fog. Pain is not the event, it is your interpretation. And when you clear judgment, you clear vision. Consider a young man on his first day in a strategic meeting. Nervous, sweating, convinced he doesn't belong, he speaks softly, certain that silence in the room is disapproval. He leaves thinking he failed. But here's what he missed. A manager leaned forward as he spoke. Another took notes. The leader paused in thought before replying. He wasn't dismissed. He was considered. But emotion made him blind. Now imagine the Stoic walking into the same room. No rush to perform, no need to be liked. They watch, they breathe, they see who interrupts, who avoids eyes, who speaks too much from insecurity, and who speaks little but carries weight. This isn't mind reading, it's seeing what is, free of distortion. Detachment does not mean coldness, it means disciplined distance. It means catching your first reaction and asking, is this real, or is this my projection? Averted eyes could mean disrespect or distraction. Without detachment, you'll never know. With it, you begin to see. Epictetus said, it's not events that upset us, but our interpretation of them. The paradox is clear. The more you obsess over yourself, the less you truly perceive others. Step outside, and suddenly you notice what was invisible. Hesitation, tone shifts, the alliances forming in silence. Here's the practice. Start with silence. In your next gathering, resist speaking first. Just observe. Watch who gets cut off, who is encouraged, who changes posture when authority enters. At first, it feels unnatural. With time, it becomes your edge. Then, practice non-reactivity. If someone makes a cutting remark, don't flinch, don't fill the gap with nervous laughter. Hold it like a coin in the light. Ask, what does this reveal about them? This is apatheia, not apathy, but mastery over disturbance. You still feel, but you are no longer ruled by feeling. In a world addicted to reaction, the calm observer becomes magnetic. People feel your steadiness. They may not name it, but they trust it. And slowly, you shift the air in the room without saying much at all. You'll start to see patterns others miss. Who laughs toward the one they admire? Who masks insecurity with jokes? Who insists on the last word because it's all they have? You don't judge. You register. And you act only when it serves something higher. This is the power of detachment. It clears the lens. It sharpens the edge. It makes your words fewer but heavier because they come from clarity, not noise. And if you think this makes you distant, think again. True presence, grounded and undistracted, is rare and magnetic. People trust the one who cannot be easily shaken. So ask yourself, are you ready to trade the comfort of reactivity for the clarity of disciplined sight? Because once you do, the world looks different, not louder, quieter, not confusing, ordered. That is when everything changes. But here's the challenge. Once you've learned to observe others, can you turn that same vision inward? What happens when the person you must see most clearly is yourself? Moving into the second chapter, imagine standing in front of a mirror that doesn't just reflect your face, but your presence. Not the clothes you wear or the expression you practice, but the subtle energy you carry, the weight you leave in a room after you've gone. Now, here's the hard truth. What you think you are and what others actually feel when they are around you may be two entirely different things. You may feel confident, but to them, you come across as arrogant. You may think you're funny, but your jokes might drain the air instead of lifting it. You may believe you're respected, but often you're only tolerated. And unless you step outside yourself, unless you look at your life as if you were a stranger passing by, you will never know. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And the reverse is also true. We often imagine ourselves as better, wiser, kinder than we actually are. Familiarity breeds illusion. That's why the greatest journey is not upward or outward, it's inward. It's the courage to see yourself clearly, stripped of excuses, stripped of masks. Now imagine this. A camera crew follows you for a week. Not to judge, not to embarrass, but simply to study you. Every glance, every pause, every small reaction is recorded for strangers to analyze. How would you act if you knew nothing could be hidden? Would you still interrupt people mid-sentence? Would you still make that passive-aggressive joke? Would you still fake a laugh at something you find unbearable just to avoid standing out? That discomfort you feel when you picture this, that's awareness being born. Here's where transformation begins. When you start observing yourself from a distance, patterns emerge. You begin to see that what you call a confident tone is actually rushed, that your calm posture is just stiff armor, that your laughter in groups is more reflex than genuine joy. You realize you've been performing instead of living, and this is not an insult. It's a reality for all of us until we learn to stop. The Stoics never saw self-observation as self-punishment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. When you see your flaws, don't run. Don't bury them under shame." That sting of recognition is not the end of confidence, it is the beginning of transformation. Let me share a story. Sarah was known as the strong one in her circle, loud, energetic, always ready with an answer. People relied on her, or so she believed. Then one day, after a project collapsed, she overheard two colleagues whispering, "Sarah doesn't listen. She just wants to be right." Those words cut deep. At first, she burned with anger, ready to defend herself. But that night, she replayed the meeting in her mind, again and again, and she saw it. She had cut people off. She had masked her insecurity with certainty. That night, she picked up a journal, not to write about what others did wrong, but to record her own tone, her own choices. She began watching herself as though she were a character in a book. Over time, she changed, not for applause, but for peace, because deep down, she wanted to be someone she could respect, not someone she had to keep explaining. This is the gift of self-observation, not shame, but alignment. Yet most people avoid it. They defend their identity like a fortress. They never ask, is the way I speak helping or harming? Is my presence calming or chaotic? Do people feel lighter or heavier after I leave the room? They stay blind, not because they're cruel, but because they never thought to look. But what if you did? What if you made it a daily practice to step outside yourself, not harshly, but honestly? Consider this. A CEO doesn't step into a boardroom unprepared. He studies his presence, his timing, his tone. One misstep can cost millions. Why should your life be treated with less care? You may not lead a company, but you represent something every time you walk into a room. Your values, your energy, your example. People are watching whether you like it or not. And the most powerful person in any room is rarely the loudest. It is the one who is most self-aware. So start small. Watch yourself when you're nervous. Are you trying to prove something or to connect? Watch your laughter. Are you joining in or pretending? Watch your stories. Are you speaking truth or exaggerating for approval? Don't condemn yourself. Just notice. That noticing is gold. The Stoics called it prosos, vigilance over the self. Epictetus trained his students not only in words but in this daily discipline, because without awareness, even wisdom becomes hollow. Here's a challenge. Tomorrow, act like you're being filmed for a documentary. Every word, every silence, every glance recorded. Then at night, review your day as if you were a stranger. Would that stranger see kindness or ego, presence or performance? At first, it will sting. You'll cringe at how often you chase approval, how often you bend your values to fit in. But keep going. Over time, you stop performing. You start aligning. You build a life so authentic that even a stranger would feel respect. And this is where the Stoic path turns. You stop obsessing over how others see you. You begin mastering how you see yourself. Paradoxically, people begin to see you differently too, not because you polished your image, but because you purified your essence. This is real confidence, not walking into a room thinking, I'm better than everyone here, but walking in, aware of your strengths and your flaws, and knowing you're still enough. That kind of presence doesn't shout, it doesn't chase, it simply stands, quiet, consistent, unmistakable, and from there you live from a deeper place, a place where you're not guessing who you are, because you've watched, because you've studied, because you've adjusted. You can look back at your day and say, that was me, and I am proud of it. So the next time criticism comes, or the urge to defend yourself rises, pause, step outside, observe, ask, is this the kind of person I admire? If not, change, just a little. Because zero progress is still zero. But 0.1% growth every day compounds into transformation. The Stoics never demanded perfection. They asked for progress, not performance, but alignment. And once you've learned to see yourself clearly, without flattery, without fear, you'll discover something profound. The way others see you is no longer a mystery, because how you carry yourself tells them everything. And that leads us into the next question. What if, simply by the way you stand, speak, and hold yourself, You could command respect without ever asking for it. Entering the third chapter, feel the room breathe with you. The air is thick with words that want to spill out, explanations that itch on the tongue, nervous laughter waiting to rescue the moment. And yet, there is a space between your inhale and your answer where power lives. Step into it. Now imagine a conversation stretched like a tightrope. Most people sprint across it, desperate to get to the other side. They babble, they patch gaps with filler, they mistake motion for balance. But stillness is balance. Silence steadies the rope, and the one who holds the quiet holds the ground. The world trained you to fear quiet, to treat a pause as failure, but the Stoics called it presence. Epictetus reminded his students, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak." Listening is not passive, it is surgical. It cuts through smoke and finds the structure beneath. When you stop rushing to be heard, others reveal themselves. They fill the space with what they want to prove, what they need to hide, what they hope you'll accept. Silence is not empty, it is a mirror. Here's where the lesson turned into a scar I still carry. A young lawyer, fresh in a high-stakes negotiation, was told, "Say nothing unless asked." 2 CEOs circled each other like duelists. One made a hard offer and then stopped. Not a blink, not a breath wasted. The room grew hot with quiet. The other CEO shifted, explained, justified, then began giving concessions never requested. The deal closed in minutes. It wasn't charm that won. It wasn't logic. It was the pause, deliberate, patient, unafraid. You don't need a boardroom to use this. You need discipline. Most people speak to convince. The Stoic speaks to connect, or not at all. Most people chase attention. The Stoic commands attention by refusing to chase it. When you pause, you signal control. You are not begging the room to receive you. You are deciding whether your words deserve the air. Try this. In your next exchange, hold 2 seconds before you answer. 2 seconds to let the wave of emotion pass. 2 seconds to ask, what is really being said here? Watch what happens. People lean forward. They justify more. They clarify motives. They expose insecurity. Your stillness invites truth. And in those same 2 seconds, you step out of reactivity and into choice. You stop hearing only words. You start hearing intention. Once you hear intention, the game is visible. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." That includes speech. When someone pushes through arrogance, snark, or subtle dominance, the reflex is to push back harder, louder, faster. Don't pause, not to retreat, to choose. Ask, does this deserve me? Ask, is this peace or ego? Most fires die when starved of oxygen. Your silence is that restraint. But silence is not just defense, it is design. Think of a sculptor. The statue appears not only from what is carved away, but from the space preserved around it. The same is true of speech. The space between your words is what gives them weight. Fill every moment and you become forgettable noise. Shape the space and your voice carries. Make it practical. Audit yourself. Do you over-explain when no one asked? Do you laugh to smother awkwardness that doesn't need rescuing? Do you speak fast because you're afraid your calm might be misread as uncertainty? If yes, you're normal, and you're leaking power. From here, own your silence. A woman named Elise handled angry customers for a living. She solved problems fast, talked even faster, and collapsed at night like a runner at the tape. One mentor said, "Let the quiet do some work." The next time a client unloaded on her, she did something new. Nothing. She stayed present. She let the rant end. The client blinked into the space and began to speak softly, honestly, finally. By the end, he thanked her, not for what she said, but for how she listened. That is what the pause creates. Trust. Make no mistake, this is a discipline. Your insecurity will twitch. Your ego will itch. You will want to fill the void to prove you belong. Let it pass. Let the hunger burn out without feeding it. People are not only afraid of silence, they respect the one who isn't. Here's something deeper. Master silence outside, and you begin mastering it inside. The external pause becomes an internal room where you can think. You stop chasing approval with noise. You stop rescuing awkward moments that are simply moments. You stop running from your own discomfort. Presence thickens around you, not volume, weight. In a culture that confuses loud with strong, your quiet becomes unmistakable. Not mysterious, sovereign. You are not speaking from need, you are speaking from choice. That's why people lean in when you finally do talk. They can feel you didn't have to. Intention landed. A reminder worth carving into memory. A perfect sentence dazzles for a moment. A well-placed pause commands the room. It carries confidence. It carries awareness. It carries restraint. And restraint is power. So rehearse the small moves that build the large one. Pause before answering a question. Pause after asking one. Let the silence pull the truth forward. Pause when provoked. Let the flare pass. Then decide. 3 small pauses. 1 large change. And when you fail, and you will, smile. Begin again. The pause, like any art, is learned by returning to it. At this stage, test your edges. In a heated meeting, slow your breathing by 1 count. In a difficult conversation, remove the filler words you use as armor. In a decision you feel rushed to make, step outside, touch something solid, and buy yourself a minute of life. You owe no one your immediate reaction. You owe yourself an intentional one. Here's the truth you earn by practice. The person who owns the pause owns themselves. The person who owns themselves owns the moment. And moments compound into reputation. Over time, your presence will speak before you do. Doors open for those who do not bang on them. Remember, you do not pause to win arguments. You pause to win yourself. And when you are won, calm, centered, choosing, most arguments dissolve without your effort. This is where the path turns toward mastery. You have learned to see others clearly. You have learned to watch yourself honestly. You are learning to speak with intention or not at all. Now, widen the lens. Because beyond people, there are patterns. Beyond moments, there are rhythms. And the one who reads rhythm moves first without moving fast. Let's step into that vision next. Advancing to the 4th chapter, imagine the world around you as a great clock, gears turning, hands moving, a rhythm beneath the noise. You sense the motion, yet miss the mechanism, not because it is hidden, but because your eye has not been trained to see it. Now picture your own week. The cafe at 7:45, the same table, the same scroll, the same sigh before you start the day. Patterns. We all run on them. So do rooms, teams, friendships, negotiations. The Stoics never mistook life for chaos. They saw cause and effect braided into a living tempo. Fate, yes, but not passivity. They trained attention to read the current and then stepped into it with care. Epictetus counseled, first decide what you would be, then do what you must. Alignment before effort. When you learn to see the pattern, anticipation replaces reaction. You act with timing instead of tension. You move without noise. Here's where it gets simple and sharp. Take that regular at the cafe. Same drink, same corner. Same ritual. Most passers-by barely notice. The attentive see a loop, and every loop contains a point of entry. Buy the drink before they ask. Remember the order. You have spoken in their rhythm. The door opens, not through pressure, but through attunement. That isn't luck. That's perception. Raise the stakes. You're across the table from someone known for arrogance and control, intimidating on the surface. But weeks earlier, he said in passing, "I don't care about price. I want to be first." There it is. Pattern exposed. When the moment comes, you offer a one-time priority slot. No theatrics, no push. You place your words on the track his ego already laid. Agreement follows. This is not trickery if you tether it to virtue. It is mastery anchored to understanding. Marcus Aurelius keeps us honest. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Insight without integrity is poison. Use pattern sight to harmonize, not to exploit. The same lens that reads others must be turned inward first. From here, look at yourself with the same unblinking eye. Anxiety before gatherings. Pattern. Quiet strength after a morning walk. Pattern. Delay each time uncertainty appears. Pattern. Most of us label these moods and move on. The Stoic maps them. Seneca wrote, "Fate leads the willing and drags the reluctant." Patterns are rivers. They will carry you somewhere. Choose whether you steer or drift. Start small and concrete. Track the hour your energy drops. Track the voice that drains you. Track the places that sharpen your thought. Then widen the field. In meetings, who speaks first and who waits? Who performs for approval and who speaks from detachment? Who changes tone when watched? The friend who texts only when in need. The colleague who always shifts blame. The relative who jokes instead of answering. See beyond the sentence to the sequence. Once you do, you never see the same way again. But this awareness requires patience. Patterns reveal themselves across time, not in flashes. A mind addicted to instant conclusions will miss the melody, so you keep notes. You watch without hurry. While others react to the moment, you recognize the motif. That is the difference between playing the game and understanding the board. Try this as a field drill. Choose one person who confuses you. For 2 weeks, do not confront. Do not interpret aloud. Observe. How do they respond to disagreement? Which topics vanish the moment they're raised? What compliments melt their defenses? What audience changes their performance? You're not hunting, you're mapping. At the end, you hold something rare, an emotional atlas of a human being. Now scale it. 10 people, a team, a market. Confidence grows, not the loud kind, the quiet kind. Because while others are trying to win the next moment, you're reading 10 moves ahead. You are not reacting to what they just said. You are preparing for what they always do. Remember, this isn't about being the smartest in the room. It is about being the most attuned, the most intentional, the most aligned with how reality actually moves. Use the sight with care. Meet people where they already are. Enter the rhythm that exists beneath the surface. And always ask, does this serve virtue or vanity? People are patterns. Life is rhythm. Learn the rhythm, and your decisions begin to ride wisdom instead of adrenaline. Uncertainty loses its teeth because you've trained your ear for the next bar in the song. At this stage, widen your stance and breathe. You can see further now. 2 steps ahead, yet firmly grounded, which means only 1 step remains. You've now seen how the Stoic sharpens vision, detaching from emotion, observing the self, mastering silence, and reading the hidden rhythms that govern people and events. These are the foundations, the roots, They steady the mind and clear the fog so you can finally see. This is where the journey shifts. Part A gave you tools. Part B will show you the outcomes, the way these tools quietly reshape your influence, your relationships, and your reputation. If Part A was about training the mind to perceive, Part B is about stepping into the world with that perception as armor. We move now from vision to presence, from observation to authority, and here begins the next chapter. As we step into this new chapter, picture a room where voices collide, each fighting for space. Some speak loudly, some nervously, others with rehearsed charm. Yet, amid all the noise, there is one figure who says nothing at all, and still, people notice. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's gravity. Their stillness holds more weight than all the noise combined. Now imagine being that person, the one whose presence alone shifts the air. You don't force it, you don't demand it, you embody it. That is what the Stoics understood. True influence is not performed, it is carried. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In the same way, waste no more energy trying to convince others of your worth. Be it. Show it. Let your presence make the argument no words can win. I once knew a man in a crowded office who almost never spoke in meetings. At first, people overlooked him, but over time, something strange happened. When tension ran high, everyone began turning toward him. Why? Not because he was loud, but because he was steady. He had trained himself to listen when others scrambled to respond. He watched when others rushed to prove themselves. And when he finally did speak, even if only for a minute, his words landed with force. Not because of volume, but because of contrast. This is the paradox of presence. You command attention not by seeking it, but by making yourself unshakable. And here's the secret. You can't fake it. People sense when your silence comes from fear, and they sense when it comes from discipline. Fear shrinks you. Discipline anchors you. So what does it take to build this kind of unspoken weight? It begins with restraint. The willingness to let others exhaust themselves with chatter while you stay rooted. It takes the courage to resist filling every silence, every pause, every empty moment with nervous words. And above all, it takes alignment, knowing who you are so deeply that you no longer feel the urge to prove it. Think of it like a mountain. The mountain doesn't shout to prove it exists. It stands. It watches storms rage and winds howl. And still, it remains. That is presence. That is weight. But here's the deeper truth. When you cultivate this weight, the world shifts around you. People lean in because stillness is rare. In a world addicted to reaction, calmness becomes a magnet. In a culture of constant self-promotion, restraint becomes power. I've seen this in conversations. A man eager to dominate keeps interrupting, filling every pause with his opinion. He thinks he's winning. But across the table, another sits quietly, meeting every word with calm eyes and a patient posture. By the end, the one who spoke less is remembered more. Why? Because the room felt their gravity, because their silence gave others space to reveal themselves. Seneca reminded us, silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life. The one who has mastered silence is not weak, they are seasoned. They have faced the storm within and come out unshaken. That strength doesn't need to be announced. It's carried. Like a scar, you no longer hide. Here's the challenge. Next time you enter a room, resist the urge to fill the space. Instead, let the space shape itself around you. Watch, listen, breathe. Let people feel your calmness before they hear your voice. you'll be surprised how quickly energy begins to shift. Some will feel unsettled, others intrigued, but all will take notice. The unspoken weight of presence is not about performance. It's about integrity. It's about living in such alignment that your energy carries before your words arrive. The Stoic doesn't walk into a room asking, "How can I be impressive?" The Stoic walks in asking, "How can I be immovable?" And when you master that, something powerful happens. You no longer need to out-talk anyone. You no longer need to defend or explain. Your very presence does the work for you. That is the fruit of the discipline you built in Part A. But presence is only the beginning. Because once people notice you, the real test begins. What do you do with that attention? Do you waste it on ego? Or do you direct it toward something greater? This leads us to the next lesson. Presence draws people in, but alignment keeps them there. It is not enough to be seen, you must be steady enough to stay respected. And that is where we go next. Moving into the second chapter of this new stage, picture yourself as a vessel of fire. Every word, every reaction, every small irritation either stokes the flame or drains it. Most people walk through life leaking energy at every turn, arguing over nothing, chasing every insult, reacting to every slight. By nightfall, they are empty, wondering why they feel weak. But weakness was never the issue. Waste was. Now imagine the opposite. A person who treats their energy as sacred currency. They don't spend it recklessly. They don't hand it away to those who provoke them. They conserve it, guard it, redirect it into what matters. That is power. Quiet, invisible, undeniable. Seneca once wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." The same is true of your energy. Scatter it on every conflict, every distraction, and you are nowhere. Withhold it, choose where it flows, and you become unmovable. I remember a colleague whose brilliance was never in doubt, but whose temper cost him dearly. Every small inconvenience set him off. By noon he was exhausted. By evening his influence was gone. People learned to dismiss his words because he had already spent himself on trivialities. Contrast him with another man in the same office, calm, measured, almost unshakable. He rarely joined debates. He never chased gossip. But when he did step in, people listened. Why? Because he had preserved himself. His words carried weight because they were fueled by stored strength, not scattered fragments. Here's the lesson. The Stoic does not fight every battle. They choose. They do not react to every provocation. They wait. They know that energy conserved is influence compounded. The world is full of noisy contests, arguments over status, petty insults, meaningless disputes. The moment you invest your energy there, you are poorer for it. The moment you hold back, you are richer. Think of it like a reservoir. Each reaction you suppress adds to the depth. Each silence you hold back adds to the strength. When the right moment comes, you can release it with precision, like water directed through a narrow gate to move a wheel. Not random, not wasteful, purposeful. Epictetus taught, if you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your integrity. Chasing approval is another leak in the vessel. It drains more energy than anger. The person who constantly seeks validation burns out quickly because they are feeding everyone else while starving themselves. The Stoic redirects that energy inward, fortifies their core, and then offers from abundance instead of desperation. Let me tell you a story. There was a young athlete, fiery, eager to prove himself. Every game he reacted to every foul, argued with referees, let rivals control his mood. His talent was undeniable, but his energy was wasted. Then an older coach pulled him aside and said, "Every time you react, you give your power away. Save it, channel it, make them exhaust themselves while you stay whole." Slowly, he changed. He stopped reacting to provocations. He conserved himself until the right moment. And when that moment came, he struck with precision. The same talent, but now refined by discipline, became unstoppable. You must ask yourself, where are you bleeding energy? Is it the pointless arguments online? The conversations replayed in your head long after they ended? The people who drain you with drama yet offer nothing in return? Every leak weakens you. Every restraint strengthens you. Here's the paradox. People often mistake non-reaction for weakness. They think you're silent because you can't fight. In truth, you're silent because you choose not to fight. That choice terrifies them, because nothing unsettles an aggressor more than the one who refuses to be baited. They throw their energy at you, and you remain whole. Energy is not infinite. Every day is a finite sum. The Stoic spends it where it matters, building, creating, aligning with virtue, not defending ego, not proving small points, not chasing shadows. In this conservation lies resilience. In this restraint lies command. So here's a practice. At the start of your day, ask, where will my energy flow today? Write down 3 places it deserves to go. Then, as provocations appear, remind yourself, does this deserve my fire, or will it burn out my light? Even catching yourself once is progress. Progress, not perfection. In time, you'll notice a shift. Your presence feels heavier. People sense the difference. You are no longer the one pulled into storms. You are the one who stays calm at the center. You are no longer drained by every encounter. You are replenished because you've cut the leaks. And the truth is simple. Conserve your energy and you will outlast those who waste theirs. Refuse to be drained and you will outgrow those who scatter themselves thin. Hold your fire, and you will choose when and where the blaze matters. That is the Stoic's edge. That is the fruit of conservation. And from here, we move to the next step. When you have guarded your energy and built consistency, you begin to radiate something subtler: authority without words, respect without demand. The power of a reputation shaped not by noise, but by discipline. From here, let's step into a truth most people overlook. Reputation is not built in the spotlight. It is built in the shadows, in the small moments no one claps for. You can impress once with brilliance, but you earn authority only through consistency. The Stoic understood that. 1 act can inspire, 10 acts can impress, but 1,000 quiet acts, aligned day after day, that is what makes people trust you without question. Picture the craftsman who shows up before dawn. No fanfare, no audience, just the steady rhythm of work. His neighbors hardly notice. His peers may not applaud. But years later, when something must be built to last, everyone turns to him. Not because he shouted, but because his work whispered the same message over and over. I can be relied upon. Now imagine your own life. How many times have you burned bright for a week only to fade the next? How often have you promised change with fire, then let that fire collapse into ash? The world remembers less of what you start and more of what you sustain. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. And to be one means to live it every day, not occasionally, not only when seen, but always. Consistency is magnetic. It draws people without demand. It creates an aura of authority that no speech can manufacture. A person who reacts the same way under pressure, who shows up with the same steadiness in chaos or in calm, that person becomes a pillar others lean on. And here's the paradox. You don't need to chase recognition. When your rhythm is steady enough, the world begins to align to you. Let me give you a story. There was a teacher, quiet and unremarkable to many. He never raised his voice, never boasted of his knowledge. Year after year he arrived early, stayed late, gave his attention to students with the same calm patience. At first, parents overlooked him, chasing flashier educators. But when crises came, when students lost direction, when chaos disrupted the school, this quiet man was the one everyone trusted. His authority wasn't declared. It was earned drop by drop, day by day. By the end of his career, he had shaped more lives than the loudest voices combined. That is the authority of consistency. It cannot be bought, it cannot be faked, and it cannot be stolen. Ask yourself, when people think of me, do they see someone who is steady, or someone who is unpredictable, pulled by mood, swayed by the winds of circumstance? Do my words carry weight because they are rare and reliable, or do they evaporate because I change them tomorrow? The Stoics practiced what the Greeks called prosos, attentiveness, not a grand act, but a daily vigilance. They believed character is built in layers, one decision at a time. Epictetus taught that if you want to be a philosopher, don't just speak of philosophy, live it. Repeat it until it becomes your nature. That repetition, quiet and unglamorous, is what creates a reputation no insult can pierce. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People are not watching for your peak moments. They are watching for your patterns. They notice whether you keep promises when no one is watching. They notice if your respect for others shifts, depending on who's in the room. They notice if your principles bend under pressure. And over time, those patterns become your reputation. Consistency is also freedom. When you are consistent, you don't need to remember your performance. You don't live in fear of being caught out. You are simply yourself, over and over, and that itself is power. But don't mistake consistency for perfection. It is not about never failing. It is about returning to the path after failure. Even the Stoics faltered. Marcus Aurelius confessed in his journal every weakness, every lapse, but always wrote himself back into alignment. That is the model. Stumble, then steady. Fall, then return. Authority comes not from never falling, but from never abandoning the discipline of standing up again. Here's a practice for you. Choose one small discipline and repeat it every day for 30 days. Not something grand, something small but meaningful. Writing 3 lines in a journal. Pausing before every reaction. Greeting people with calm presence. Watch how repetition changes you. Watch how others begin to sense something different in your presence. Authority doesn't shout. It radiates. And if you want a reminder to keep going, drop a comment with just one word: steady. Let that be your pledge to yourself. And if you're finding value here, subscribe. It keeps you connected to a community walking this same path of discipline and quiet strength. In time, you'll notice the shift. People speak your name with a different tone. They lean on you when storms come. Not because you demanded it, not because you sought it, but because you lived it. Day after day, moment after moment. This is the authority of consistency. It's subtle, it's silent, but it is the kind of power that outlasts all noise. And here's the next step. Once consistency shapes your presence, you unlock something greater. The ability to see further, to transform perception itself into foresight. From rhythm to strategy, from steadiness to anticipation. That is where we go next. At this stage, the path widens. You've built presence. You've guarded your energy. You've earned authority through consistency. Now, a new question rises. What happens when your perception grows so sharp it begins to see ahead? This is where perception transforms into foresight, and foresight turns into strategy. Imagine standing at the edge of a battlefield, the dust still, the soldiers waiting. One leader scans the horizon and sees only what is in front of him: shields, swords, and shouting men. Another leader notices the subtle shifts, the restless horses, the line of clouds, the hesitation in the enemy's ranks. Hours later, one leader reacts to chaos. The other has already moved his troops to meet it. The difference is not luck. The difference is sight carried into tomorrow. The Stoics knew this art well. Life, they taught, is not random. It moves in currents. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Observe how all things change and are in constant flux. If everything is in flux, then patterns are inevitable. To see the pattern is to glimpse the future, not in mystical terms, but in practical ones. The one who watches closely is never surprised." Here's where this becomes practical for you. Think of your own life. How many times have you been blindsided by someone's behavior, only to realize later that the signs were always there? The colleague who always avoided responsibility, the friend who always needed more than they gave, the relationship where laughter always died in the same way. The pattern was present. You simply weren't trained to see it. Foresight is built from these details. It is not magic, it is accumulation. A hesitation here, a repeated phrase there, a choice that repeats in cycles. Once you collect enough, the rhythm reveals itself. Others stumble. You step smoothly. Let me give you a story. There was a quiet negotiator who always seemed to win. Not because he argued harder, but because he noticed earlier. Once, before a critical meeting, he recalled a single offhand comment made weeks before. "I just want to be first." That small clue revealed the man's true priority. So instead of fighting on numbers, he framed his offer around exclusivity. "You will be the first to see this." The deal closed instantly, not by force, by foresight. He had listened in a way most people don't, but here lies the danger. Insight is a blade. Used without virtue, it cuts trust. Used with virtue, it shapes harmony. Marcus Aurelius warned himself, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." The temptation to manipulate is always present when you see further than others. Resist it. If your foresight is used for vanity, it rots you from within. If it is used for wisdom, it fortifies you. Now turn the lens inward. Your own life runs on patterns. Do you always feel drained after scrolling for hours? That is a pattern. Do you always find energy after a morning walk? A pattern. Do you always collapse into hesitation before risk? Another pattern. If you don't study yourself, you'll call these moods. If you do study yourself, you'll recognize them as cycles you can either break or harness. Seneca said, "Fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant." Patterns are the rope of fate. Choose whether you are pulled or whether you walk. Here's a practice. For the next 2 weeks, choose one person or one habit and map it. Don't analyze loudly. Don't confront. Just observe. How do they respond to stress? What small triggers set them off? What rhythms repeat every few days? Write it down. At the end of 2 weeks, you'll hold something most people never have, an emotional map. With it, you can anticipate instead of react. You can prepare instead of scramble. The power of foresight lies not only in understanding others, but also in mastering your own cycles. When you know your own triggers, you stop being predictable. When you know your own strengths, you position them at the right moment. Your life begins to feel less like a storm you endure and more like a rhythm you dance to. But patience is required. A mind addicted to instant gratification cannot see patterns. It wants conclusions now. Foresight demands waiting, recording, resisting the urge to label too soon. The Stoic mind stays present, tracks details, and holds judgment until the rhythm is undeniable. This patience is your advantage. Others live moment to moment. You live in the flow. So remember this: people are not mysteries. Life is not chaos. Everything is rhythm. Everyone is a sequence. To those who rush, it looks random. To those who pause, it becomes predictable. And when you carry foresight, uncertainty loses its sting. You no longer need to predict the future. You simply recognize the direction it has already begun to take. That recognition is enough. From here, the path sharpens again. Because once foresight becomes your companion, the final step appears, the ability to be untouchable, not because nothing ever happens to you, but because you meet everything already prepared. You've now walked through Part B, where presence, discipline, and foresight ripen into authority. But this is not the summit. It is the threshold. Once these practices settle into your bones, influence stops being something you perform. It becomes something you carry. This is where we enter Part C, the final stage, where silence itself becomes power, and the Stoic stands untouchable amid the storm. Entering the final stage, picture a storm in full force. Voices clash, tempers flare, fear spreads like fire through dry grass. In the middle of it stands one figure who does not shout, does not scramble, does not bend. Their stillness is louder than the storm. Their calm steadies the hands of everyone watching. This is the authority that comes not from command, but from composure. Now imagine yourself in that place, surrounded by noise, pressed by demands, tested by people who thrive on stirring chaos. Most will match noise with noise, anger with anger, but the Stoic knows to answer frenzy with frenzy is to drown in the same river. Authority is not seized, it is carried. It is the quiet weight that bends the room without demand. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Be like the rock against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." That is silent authority. The rock never argues with the sea. It does not chase the waves or try to quiet them. It simply remains, and its stillness breaks the storm. Consider a story. A general once led men into battle against impossible odds. When arrows rained and soldiers wavered, he did not scream for courage. He stood tall, steady, unshaken. His composure spread like fire in reverse, calming instead of consuming. The men rallied, not because of his words, but because his silence told them everything. They were not lost as long as he stood. That kind of authority cannot be faked. It is born of discipline, of self-mastery, forged long before the storm. You and I face different kinds of battles, but the principle holds. In workplaces, in families, in friendships, chaos will always arrive, and the one who holds steady becomes the anchor for everyone else. People instinctively lean toward the calm figure. They trust the one who is not moved by panic. They follow not because they are ordered to, but because they are drawn to certainty in a world of noise. This is why silence, properly held, commands. It unsettles those who thrive on disruption. It steadies those who long for order. It declares without words, "I will not be broken here." And when others feel that, their own chaos begins to quiet. But let's be clear, this silence is not passivity. It is not weakness. It is deliberate restraint. It is authority anchored in virtue. Epictetus warned that power without discipline corrupts, but silence anchored in discipline creates trust. So here is your challenge. When the next storm rises, resist the pull to match its volume. Breathe, stand firm, speak little, if at all. Let your composure speak first. Watch how people shift around you, how their eyes find you without you asking. That is the proof of silent authority. And from here, we advance deeper. Because once you've learned to hold steady in the storm, the next step is to move from mere steadiness to strategy, turning foresight into deliberate design. Advancing to the second chapter of this final stage, picture a chessboard mid-game, pieces scattered, tension thick. Most players see only the piece they want to move next, but the master sees 5 moves ahead. He knows not just what will happen, but when. That is foresight maturing into strategy. Now imagine carrying that same vision into your daily life. Conversations, choices, relationships, none of them random, none of them isolated. Every gesture carries consequence. Every reaction opens a door or closes one. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Observe how all things change and are in constant flux." Flux means movement. Movement means rhythm. Rhythm means outcomes that can be traced. Here's where the shift happens. Perception shows you the rhythm, but foresight lets you anticipate the song before it plays. And once you anticipate, you no longer react, you design. I knew a man who worked in negotiations. He was quiet, unassuming, and often underestimated. In one case, his counterpart kept boasting that money wasn't his concern. He just wanted priority. Most people dismissed it as bravado. This man didn't. Weeks later, at the crucial moment, he framed his offer around exclusivity. You'll be the first to receive it. No one else will see it before you. The deal closed instantly, not by pushing harder, but by listening deeper. He had turned perception into foresight, and foresight into strategy. But here is the Stoic warning. Power without virtue corrupts. Epictetus cautioned, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. To see further than others tempts you to manipulate, to bend outcomes for ego. But foresight without integrity is poison." The true Stoic uses foresight to align, not to exploit. To meet people where they already are, not to drag them where they never wish to go. Turn the lens inward. Your own life is filled with loops. Do you always lose focus after a certain distraction? Do you always feel renewed after a walk at dawn? Do you always stall when faced with uncertainty? These are not moods, they are patterns, and when you see them clearly, you can anticipate yourself. You can plan not to be trapped by the same cycle again. Seneca said, "Fate leads the willing and drags the reluctant." When you resist your own rhythms, you are dragged. When you accept and design with them, you are led. Here's a practice. For 2 weeks, map your own triggers. Note the hours you are most clear. Note the conditions that weaken you. Note the patterns in your decisions. At the end, you will hold not just a record, you will hold a strategy. With it, you no longer stumble into the same mistakes. You see them coming and step aside. This is the quiet art of strategy, to move not out of impulse, but from vision. Others waste strength fighting battles they could have avoided. The Stoic sees ahead and acts before the storm breaks. And here's the truth you'll discover. Foresight is not about predicting the future. It is about seeing the trajectory of the present. When you see where the arrow is already flying, you don't need prophecy. You only need clarity. At this stage, your path sharpens again. Because once foresight becomes strategy, the next question arises. Can you wield that strategy without showing it, without boasting, without even being seen? That is where invisible power begins. From here, let us move into a quieter territory. Not the power that dazzles, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind so subtle, so disciplined that most never see it until its results are undeniable. Invisible power. Picture the swordsman who rises before dawn. No crowd watches, no applause follows. He trains in silence, his blade cutting air long before it will ever cut an opponent. By the time he enters battle, the fight is already decided. His opponent sees only the strike. They never see the thousands of unseen hours that gave birth to it. That is the essence of invisible power, discipline hidden until revealed. The Stoics lived this way. Epictetus reminded his students, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Not talk about it, not display it. Do it, in obscurity if necessary, in quiet repetition, because true strength doesn't need the stage. It grows in the dark, then steps into the light, already complete. Consider a story. A man I knew worked in an office where everyone fought for recognition. They spoke loud, dressed sharp, angled for credit in every meeting. He did the opposite. He worked consistently, prepared quietly, learned skills no one thought important. Months passed. People dismissed him. Then came a crisis. A system broke down. Deadlines loomed. Suddenly, he was the only one who knew how to fix it. Overnight, authority shifted, not because he demanded it, because he had prepared for the moment others ignored. His invisible discipline became undeniable power. This is where invisible power outlives performance. But the Stoic trains for the unseen hours, knowing that life will always test when no stage is ready. Invisible power is not secrecy. It is patience. It is restraint. It is work without applause, action without witness, discipline without recognition. And here lies the paradox. The more invisible your power, the more unshakable it becomes. Because no one can take it from you. A title can be stripped, applause can fade, but discipline, that belongs to you. It is carried inside, unseen, untouchable. Marcus Aurelius warned himself never to live for reputation alone, but to live aligned with his own nature. Reputation is fragile. Essence is not. The Stoic builds essence in silence, layer upon layer, until the world cannot ignore it. Ask yourself, where am I building for show, and where am I building for truth? Which parts of my life collapse if no one is watching? Which habits remain even in solitude? Those answers reveal whether your strength is borrowed or real. Invisible power is freedom. You do not need to prove yourself each day. You do not exhaust yourself in constant display. You carry weight quietly. And when the moment comes, people will think you acted suddenly, when in fact you acted inevitably. So remember this. The deepest power is not announced. It is embodied. It is carried. It is revealed only when the moment calls, and then it is unstoppable. And this brings us to the last step, the state where silence, foresight, and invisible power merge into something greater, becoming untouchable. At this stage, the journey narrows to its sharpest point. You've learned to steady yourself in storms, to turn foresight into design, to build invisible power through discipline. Now comes the culmination, the state where nothing outside can shake what lives within. Becoming untouchable. Now imagine this moment. Someone insults you in public, their words sharp, their intent clear. Most would burn with the need to answer, to strike back, to defend pride. But you do not move. You look at them as though they are throwing stones at a mountain. Their noise cannot alter your foundation. Their fury cannot touch your center. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." The world may roar, but if your judgment does not surrender, you remain whole. Untouchable is not about building walls. It is about becoming so rooted in virtue that no one can pull you away from yourself. Consider the story of a Stoic philosopher brought before a hostile crowd. He was mocked, cursed, humiliated. People waited for outrage. He smiled gently and said, "You cannot insult me, for you do not know me." The crowd fell silent. In that instant, his composure carried more force than their voices combined. He was untouchable, not because the world was kind, but because he refused to hand them his peace. This is the paradox. When you stop chasing control over others, you discover control over yourself. And that control makes you immune. Anger no longer dictates you. Approval no longer enslaves you. Chaos no longer drowns you. You walk into the same storms as everyone else, but you do not sink. You carry the calm sea within. Untouchable does not mean unreachable. It means unwavering. It means walking through life with a core that no insult, no failure, no betrayal can corrode, because you know who you are and you stand firm in it. And so, the journey completes itself. From detachment to foresight, from silence to discipline, from presence to unshakable essence. This is the Stoic path. To outsmart not by deception, but by mastery. To move through the world not with noise, but with gravity. To live in such a way that nothing outside can command your soul. To be untouchable is not to escape the storm, but to become the rock it cannot move. Here is the path to becoming untouchable, not by forcing power over others, but by mastering yourself. When you see with clarity, when you hold silence without fear, when you act with intention and move with wisdom, you rise above the noise. Others fight to be noticed, yet you are the one they cannot ignore. That is influence. That is strength. If this message speaks to you, take a moment to subscribe and continue walking this path of clarity. Share your presence in the comments with just 2 words: stay clear. Remember, true growth is born in silence, in the choices no one sees but you. Hold to them, and your life will speak louder than any words. Stay steady, stay sharp, and be ready for the next step, where we uncover how to move in every room with quiet power.